So the last one, which I kind of have 2 points here, are service discoverability and governance. So these are ones that, are being built out more on the platforms themselves and are going to make these challenges much, much less for composability. So service discoverability is ways of browsing and tying systems. And I think a lot of this is like no code type of integrations and marketplaces where you can tie these in automatically. But it also does mean that from a development standpoint, you can query these systems and really understand how they work and things very, very easily. So really it's about, showing how they can be discovered and how they can be used, and hopefully long term, more of that no code type of integration where they can discover a new system and kind of integrate that in. On the governance side, this is, components must be managed and maintained properly and used in that kind of, the standard way you want to use them for developing components, for testing, for deployment, and things like this. But I also think on the other side, in your organization, deciding governance-wise is like, okay, if we're going to use 5 different platforms and each one takes time to vet and test and legal contracts and those things, what are your business governance requirements around terms and different things like that? So if you bring in a CRM system and it renews every 1 year, and you bring in a CRM and it's every 3 years, that gets very difficult to manage all those things, right? So if you come up with a good standard in governance practices within your business of contracts and things like that, and come into these platforms and say, hey, we would like to maintain this type of governance requirements for our organization. Can we do the contract around that? It makes it much easier to manage all these platforms and manage these different systems. So you have to come forward and find a vendor that's willing to adjust with those things as well, because sometimes vendors can be very difficult to work with and they don't want to adjust some of those things. So obviously that's important. Are they working with me? Is this vendor working with me? So picking the platform, but picking it that fits your governance and your requirements is really key. I think you added something there too, Joel. You said, I think we see compliance standards for composability in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see, like, there's the Mock Alliance, which is not really a governance organization, but it's an organization that recognizes what composability is, and by being part of that, it sort of leads you to a little bit more as a customer, as a system integrator. You say, oh, if someone's in the Mock Alliance or if they're in this other organization, I think we're going to start to see compliance standards that can be enforced, so that organizations that sort of build and sell as vendors these headless and composable things, to say, hey, they are following the standards for the kind of interoperability and modularity that we need to see for these things to work well together.
Yeah, think of a CRM as an example. And when we get really true standards and really true composability that's no code and working really, really smoothly, why can't we get AI to say, hey, change my CRM from HubSpot to Salesforce or vice versa, and it just does it automatically for you, right? Like that is, in the future, but it's not that crazy. If we start getting interoperability, being able to swap components out, and if the front end is doesn't change at all, depending on what the back end is doing, and we have these service discoverabilities, this governance stuff in place, we have these standards compliance, it should be that easy to swap things in and out. So, that's the really crazy long-term vision, but that's the way we could get to.